processing. And that's why I think everybody who is serious about this should actually sign up for this tour, because it will be, I think it will be revealing. And
If I could just clarify, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to imply that you were withholding information that you had. I'm talking about information, for example, cost estimates and
Right.
building sketches that have been done. In all fairness to the architects, a week and a half, you get a lot of work out of it. That's pretty amazing. But what you have is a list of needs and wants that the architects prepared for you. And what we don't have is the cost of that.
right, and that's what we're on the 30th. But it would also help if people did take the tour, so when we do meet on the 30th, they are aware of the existing conditions, so when the architects present the cost and look at the different facilities and, you know, the different options, that we're all operating the same.
There are a few other things, Bob, that you should mention about how much money has been put into these two older schools in the past 5 to 10 years, and how much money that this entire facility and our group and myself has to be put in before you even consider building those additions on. I mean, you have to bring these structures up to code before you even consider putting addition on, and how much is that going to cost, and how much is that going to be funded? You know, I don't want to condemn any building, but we have to weigh.
In 2 weeks.
We have to weigh every option and choose the best for our district.
You know, I think I did make available to you too, the questions that we addressed last time. And also, part of the thing on the facilities I made available was each of the buildings and what were some of the recommendations of the things that had to be done or needed to be done to draw the code. So this is what we're working with. So as long, I'm very pleased to see as many people turn out. I want to keep the communications open. If there's any information, even after the meeting, that you want to call and ask about, I'll try to provide that. I'm more than happy to share anything that we have talked about in committee. I just think it's a great process. Whatever the decision is, it will be the voice of the people, and people will be informed, and will have had an opportunity to visit the sites, to talk about the situation. The very fact that people are discussing this, I think, is exciting, and I think is important. Thank you.
Can I ask just one question? It looks like if you look at 3D, okay? Looks like it would be a beautiful facility, better than saving money better than 3A. The only thing that hit me all the time is there been any talk or consideration for moving bus route?
Yes, and that, we haven't, I think, in the 3 weeks that we've been on board, we haven't gotten to those discussions, and I think maybe we should talk to the committee. The maintenance facility is fairly antiquated. I think the question I would pose is, are you going to be able to do that within your debt limit? And so maybe it's, if you can, you should consider it, because a bus maintenance facility would be aidable at 95%. I don't think that you would build a bus storage facility, because your bus drivers take the buses home pretty much, so you don't need the storage. But I could see some advantages of moving that facility down, and for one thing, it would create some more space for playfield and athletic, perhaps. And cosmetic.
Mr. Hubert, can I just clarify one thing? On the 30th, you guys are going to get numbers. Then what happens on the 5th? They propose to you?
On the 5th, this committee will present to the Board of Education what they have been doing, the different options that they have been looking at. They may feel comfortable in making a recommendation. They may feel comfortable in just suggesting options, but then it becomes the board's decision as to which way they want to go. One, do they want to accept any of the options? Two, do they want to...
So they get numbers, and then they have 7 days to make a choice. I mean, basically, after we get real numbers, they have a week to decide.
Pardon?
Once they, from the 30th to the 5th, that's their timeline to decide officially, right?
No.
No, not
We've
really.
been doing this since last
Well, I
November.
understand that, but as far as getting numbers
No,
next week for...
What you have to understand is that they need to make a presentation
Right.
to the board. That doesn't mean that the board has to decide that night you know, they have time, the board may want to have more figures, and maybe another meeting, the board may say we would like to have.
That's
more
what I wanted to
information.
clarify, is it's not an absolute on the 5th. Okay.
Let me just add something to that. This relates to the schedule, relates to your question. If, and you made a good point, the 95% aid, we don't know. We don't. We know that we've got it through the end of June forward, period. We don't know if it's going to be extended. But using that date, if we don't have a vote by January, the end of January, you basically are going to take a chance that you won't get your 95% aid. Okay, so backing up. Well, it's not about that. You can, but then what happens? You know, you make mistakes, you got a lot of change orders, and you guys are going to be, you know, pretty upset with us. So it's important to do a thorough design. And then there's also about a 4-month period when the state education department reviews and approves, and then there's another couple of months to bid. So it's a process, and you have to go through it. You can't shortcut it. So that January date, really, I would prefer December, quite honestly, but I think that's not enough time, and I told the committee this 3 weeks ago. So late January, back up from there. If you're going to vote in late January, the board needs to adopt a resolution by law, minimum of 45 days prior to the vote. And that 45-day requirement is actually when the first public announcement has to be put in the newspaper. So you got to go probably to whenever your board meets in December. If it's early December, then that's when the board will need to adopt a resolution. So you have, and the board has, from now until then, if they want to go with a late January vote, to decide. And they could go right up until December before they decide on an option, I suppose. We would prefer that they decide on, or at least narrow it down to maybe 1 or 2, so that we can do a little more depth analysis. And some of the questions that you've asked in your handout can be answered. Because all of these questions aren't going to be answered by the 30th. And probably they won't all be answered by the 5th. We're going to have preliminary construction cost estimates. We're going to have our best guess of what more than a guess, but our best estimate of what aid will be. And then we're not going to be able to tell you what the tax impact is. That's going to be up to fiscal advisors. So there's a process, and we can meet that date, but it's going to take a pretty concerted effort between now and December in order to do
I have
that.
a question, please.
Yes.
On option A, you were talking about Ross Point Elementary and the elevator going to the gym floor to the stage. Where does the library go in the new building? Because right now it's in the basement. So does the gym, the elevator doesn't have to go down there right now, right?
Second floor, the
Yeah.
elevator would connect to the second.
Yeah, this shows the library being put up in the middle of the building on the second floor. So
Okay,
that
thank you.
renovates it. And we're going to be around. If you have specific questions about these plans, just come on up front and we can go through them. And any feedback would be welcome because it's the first time we've gotten any public feedback on these plans. So really, they're very preliminary. There's a lot of development that needs to be done.
So at $21 million that we have as a debt right now, do we add $12 million onto that $29 million? What we have right now?
I'm sorry.
It's going to cost $29 million, right?
No,
We
said
don't know.
had a definite
We
cost.
don't know. We're estimating. Let's estimate 95%. Okay? Plus we have 12, we have,
No, I think what we're saying is, we could, if we had to have a project,
yeah,
our debt limit would be, we would have up to 29 to spend. Doesn't mean we have to spend all 29.
right. But we have right now 12 million that we own.
Yes.
So we're adding 12 million onto 29 million, correct?
No, what your debt limit is
For the
approximately
total.
41. Yeah. you
Your
would-
debt limit, the district's debt limit is 41 million. And that's based on, I think, 10% of the assessed valuation of the properties in the district. So you have a debt limit of 41 million. Your current debt is 12 million.
And how long have we been in debt for that long? How many years?
I don't know, but on the district's incurred debt,
Well, I can tell you, we did an $11 million bond. Must have been almost 10 years ago. We did repairs in Rouse's Point, Millers, we did some work here. And then a couple of years after that, I think we did a $3 million bond for technology and security. Those are 30-year, I think they were 20, but the state forced us to go over to 30.
We renewed and we also, refinanced them.
Yeah, we refinanced what, last year?
No, about 3 or 4 years.
2002.
2003, we refinanced again?
That was required by the state. It was the law that was enacted. And there was no, all the districts in the state that had debt on capital construction had to refinance it for a longer period, so that the state had fewer debt payments each year.
But we're not getting fewer, we're going up,
Excuse me?
Okay.
right? We're going up. We were at 8 million, now we're at 12 million, we're going up.
No,
Will we refinance?
No, I believe me, what I said when Jack said that 8 million, he was correct, because what we weren't looking at was the bonding for the buses, and that when we contacted Unistat, they gave us that information. They're looking at all the bus bonds that we have for the past 4 years. That's what brings it up. But our actual debt, according to what I have here, the information I gave the committee, the combined debt was $8,781,152.
Yeah, that's documented, right?
Right?
That's documented?
Yes, that's documented.
And the buses, if we have buses, that means that the buses aren't going to be, if we end up building the buses, we're not actually going to take the buses like they are now, right? To the bus drivers' homes, because that's going to have an extra expense too for gas. Are we also looking at that?
You know, not to get into that dialogue, but
Well,
those
that
are
should
the
be
kinds,
included. I mean, you're talking about taxpayers. I mean, people are paying taxes.
these are the kinds of questions the committee's been dealing with for the last 6 months.
Oh, I don't see them getting resolved.
Well, you're welcome to your opinion. But we've gone through those kinds of costs.
And if you have any specific questions, I appreciate it. Just give me a call, give me your specific questions, I'll give you specific answers. But for us to give you a specific answer, when you're asking a question without having had a chance to look at it, it's a very difficult thing. I don't want to give you misinformation. So if you have some specific questions and you want to feel free to give me a call, I'm more than happy to address them.
No problem.
Bob, do you get the letter I sent you? I was waiting for some answer. I sent you about July the 17th. The letter I sent you, I couldn't make that last meeting.
Yes.
I had a few answers I'd like
Okay.
to resolve.
And I do have a lot of the transportation I've been working on, and I will, share that at the next meeting too. I have the grid, the maps, and then also the cost of the transportation.
Also, the costs like to have in this project, if we went with that plan 3A, elimination of some positions, how much would be saved? Have you gotten able to get into that?
I did. I started looking at that, Jack, and basically it would, some of the savings that we're looking at, I can give you just one figure right now. If you were to go to that plan, you would save approximately $7,000 just in itinerant travel back and forth. The other thing that I looked at is, as far as having all the population in one building and knowing what your maximum is that you can have in each of the classrooms, then that would also help to determine how much faculty you would have to have. But until, you can project, but once we get the enrollment projections, and I would know then, at that time, when, let's say in a 5-year span, then I can actually tell you more specifically. But to say right off the bat, we can probably save 2 or 3 as faculty members, I really can't unless I have an accurate enrollment projection. But I did look at the itinerant, been looking at, some of the things as far as maintenance, but I haven't been able to put a dollar on it yet. So, and we have.
I think it's going to be playing a big factor in any of these. Our tax rate being the highest of any district around, and to add any more.
And I also did, on that note, call Bill Scott, and I'm waiting for him to return my call, because Northern Adirondack did the same. They really consolidated. So I just trying to get some of the information together.
They're looking at a $10 rate, less than us.
When they were talking about closing Champlain School 4 years ago, we were supposed to be saving all this amount of money. Does anybody know, figure-wise, what we actually ended up saving when we closed one school and had the children from that school going to between Ross's Point and Morris? There was supposed to be all these renovations done. It was supposed to be an elevator, supposed to be put in Ross's Point. There was all these other repairs, bathroom downstairs in the basement, for the library, for the kindergarten
I heard
classrooms. There was
that,
supposed to be renovations in Moore's.
I heard that for the first time, well, the other day, I think it came out of the meeting that you guys held. And then I checked with my building and ground supervisor, who's been here for a while, and he was not aware of any of those. I don't know if there was anything written down, or I don't know
It was
where
a
that
school
came
board
from.
meeting, it was actually held right here. It was many of the several meetings that were held prior to actually closing Champlain Elementary School.
That's true.
And why is it?
I was one of many that were here in several meetings, and nothing has been done of any kind of renovations at that time, 4 years ago.
Well, I was on the board then, and I don't recall the board committing to any capital project at that point.
You don't recall any, I'm
That
sorry?
the board committed to a capital project with the closing.
It was all in black and white, all in papers, projected actual renovations that needed to be done at Ross's Point Elementary and Moore's Elementary if we closed Champlain Elementary. We closed Champlain Elementary, and what have we gotten? How much have we actually saved in closing that one school?
You may be speaking of, around that time was that 5-year plan, our first 5-year facilities. review.
2001 was the last.
That spoke of that kind of stuff, but, you know, the board, my recollection on the board is we certainly didn't commit, you know, if we were to do that, we would be going through the same process we're going through the last 6 months. We just can't, you know, do a capital project. without going-
That's what I'm saying, though, we are going back through this all over again. From 2001, 2002, whenever this
Well,
was.
well,
We're
no,
going back through this all
what
over
I
again.
think, you know, I think there's universal, at least on the committee, and I think the board is that status quo is inadequate. Whatever we do, our buildings are deteriorating, we have to do something. You know, that's the reality. We knew 5 years ago with our first facilities review that things were getting bad. We needed to start working on certain things, and we did out of the budget. However, the magnitude of the kinds of issues I think that we need to address will require a capital project. And that's,
What construction has been done down in Ross's Point in the last 5 years?
I wish our maintenance guy was here. I couldn't tell you.
I'm aware of some that was done, and it was done, I think, by the in-house staff. There was a classroom created now.
I think we should
Oh,
have
that was
another,
Morris, I'm sorry.
I think we should have another option for your discussion, to reopen Champlain School, elementary school. Leave Ross's Point alone and Moore's alone, because we don't know the economic picture here with the losing of Wyeth Pharmaceuticals next year, at the end of next year. And that's over 1,200 jobs. I know there's a border going to come in. I don't know what the impact is that is, but 1,200 jobs is a lot. And this is homegrown jobs. So I think, I don't know what you guys are jumping the gun. Do we need, are we going to have an increase of students or what? We don't know these figures or anything like that. I think we should know why you're rushing to do all this.
As a committee, we have toured all the schools, and basically what has been happening, what you addressed possibly in Ross's Point, Moore's, and maybe in Champlain, has been putting Band-Aids on things that need to be fixed. Okay, we have lists of all the state requirements that need to be fixed, that they have basically letting us get by because, as he stated, they were grandfathered. And many of the projects are major projects that will go into the millions of the dollars to get these schools into what the state requires. So
I think the state better start changing their mandates.
school
May I just respectfully request, if it hasn't been done already, that we also get some information on the unit cost?
such as how many kids are gonna be bused, how many miles, how many minutes every day. That's what I really wanna know, not the dollars. I wanna know how it's gonna impact the kids in the communities. Are we gonna get that kind of information on these plans?
What we're working on is, the transportation department has been looking at, coming up with a plan. Should the new elementary, or if we had an elementary, let's say at Morris, what would it be as far as all the transportation? And also, should we have it here on the main campus, what would all the transportation be, the different runs and the students involved? And right now, we have an existing one, so that's not, so we will try to have that. And as a matter of fact, I have one schematic, and it's not here in my office, and then also the different bus routes that you would be looking at, and how many bus routes you would have to have if you went from one site, or if you did
To
the
me,
other.
it's one bus route too many. If the kids being bused out of the community, they should be walking to school. And that's the information that I personally want as a taxpayer and a community member. My daughter's out of the elementary school. It's not even about my family.
I think we understand that, but you also, we are a school district. And some kids, you gotta be fair about this. Some kids are being bused with tiny kids a long ways to get to an elementary building. The problem is, we gotta look at everything. You know, it may be nice to be able to walk to a building, but if your kid is in the basement, if your kid is not getting proper air circulation, the rooms are too small. If music, you gotta go around on a cart to have a music class, or the gym, your gym in Rouse's Point. I just pray that some kid is not gonna get hurt on those things that are, you know, radiation and everything else. You know, all these different things we're trying to weigh. And the last thing though of all, we don't want to, you know, we're not, whatever we do, at least I feel, this committee has worked very hard. We have two mandates. Really, one of them, to me at least, is do what's best for those kids and where are they sitting and where they're getting their education. And number two, though, we do have a mandate also. You know, we want to try to do something, what is going to be best for the taxpayer, not over 5 years, but maybe what's best for the taxpayer over the next 15 years, because we're getting tired of keep coming back in millions and millions of dollars to fix up a school. And then it's not really fixed up, we got to do it again. So, you know, we're trying to put everything, and your ideas and stuff like you have, give it to us. Put them on paper and stuff, and surely we'll consider it. We're not running into anything, but these buildings are in bad shape, both of them.
Yeah, that was my question. Why are these the only options? I felt that they should also be able to figure out for Champlain being reopened and all three schools, because there isn't anybody with a small child that does not want them local. They all want their little kids to be in the village where they are. Granted, you have the rural, that's, you know, that's not a problem. But we all, everybody feels that they should reopen Champlain, and all the kids should be going to their local schools.
You know, I agree 100% with you on that, and the kids in Rouse's Point, until I got to see something that Bob brought us a diagram. And believe it or not, our district is actually moving from Rouse's Point west. There's now almost more students that are coming from the Moores area in what we saw. And I don't know if it's a trend. If you look at the houses that are going up in Cannon's Corners, Moores Forks, towards Altona, you know, our district's moving out there. And we still got to put them in one school. And they're not going to walk from Cannon's Corners to Champlain or Moores. And I understand that. And if you know, I encourage everyone to sign up and go on those tours and look at those schools. And then ask yourself, okay, it's great for the kid to walk to the school. I mean, I couldn't walk to school because how far I live. You know who I am and how far I live from the school. But if we could bring these children, you know, and just get on one bus, go to one school, not drop them off at 3 or 4 different spots, one school, go into the school, have a nice classroom, teachers that are happy, I think we might get a better education out of our students.
One issue that I really feel would be very helpful is more of a paper trail. I spoke to you twice. I believe you were contacted by a couple other committee members. I felt funny. I've sat on boards. I've been in your position. I know how many hours you all have invested. I felt kind of guilty coming in at the 11th hour, and I wanted to catch up. I felt better when Bob told me you'd only had 3 or 4 meetings and there wasn't anything in paper to read, except we did get the facility meeting, the big facility study. But if we could see the transportation analysis, the housing analysis, if this information was available either on the website or in a publication, because we did ask repeatedly for any information that we should take into consideration. So if it's out there and we've missed it, we apologize, and I can understand where you're all coming from. But the other thing is, while you spend months and months studying, the key component is what it all costs. And that, we just have to make a plea that enough appropriate time is spent. It seems to me that, again, you want us to come and look at problems in buildings. And that's fine, but we need to know what it costs to fix those problems. And when these gentlemen come back, we need to know the difference between what must be done and what could be done. Because in these discussions, there's a constant weaving back and forth between state codes for new construction, state suggestions, and then requirements. And I really would request that whatever figures are presented, there is a very clear delineation between what must be done and what might be done. As a statement. And I think certainly that would be helpful.
I will say that when we come next time, there's still going to be preliminary costs because we're still at the very beginning of our process. But as time goes by, information will become more solidified. And part of the process, I think, in design and in school projects, what you folks in your community here are facing is not uncommon. And we have some very difficult decisions. This committee has some very difficult decisions. The board has some very difficult decisions. And there's so many variables, but it's important that you look at all those variables and then make informed decisions.
And as a matter of fact,
So,
if we needed to pay
that's what I
these
think we're doing.
Right, and if we needed to pay these gentlemen to do a more detailed analysis of the options, I, as a taxpayer, would be glad to support that. Because what we're asking them to do for free, I would assume there's a limit in terms of what they're going to be willing to give us. And so I would support investment of a certain amount of money to do a more detailed analysis.
Okay. Let me just say, because I think Bob misspoke, we're not working for free. No, hold on. We are working, we were hired back in January to do a building condition survey and update the 5-year plan. We did the building condition survey. We submitted that when it was required to be submitted in January. And then we essentially stopped until this committee got to a point where they felt they wanted us to come in and now look at the 5-year plan. They've done a lot of work since December until we were brought in at the end of July. And they felt then it was time. So the last 3 weeks, we have been working on this 5-year plan. This is a requirement that state education department mandates. You have to have a 5-year plan in place and updated before you can go to the voters. So the 5-year plan is like a master plan. And a master plan really needs to say what it is, big picture-wise, that you want to do. And that's why we were instructed to look at these options. Maybe we should look at another option. If that's going to be your call, and you can tell us if you want us to, we will. But once then this committee gets done, the 5-year plan may say, we want to do the renovation work, and we want to move the kids out of the basement, and maybe we should look at 2 of these options further. Okay? And the board's going to have to then say to us, we do want to go forward with a vote, or we don't. If you don't, you stop. We're done. And you don't pass anymore. If we have to go forward after the end of this month, middle of September, then we're going to be asking for compensation. We have people, we have mouths to feed. So, I wanted to clear that up.
Can I ask you, is there a reason why the Champlain building was not included in any of these options? Is there some reason we don't know?
I think I'll do that.
As a committee, these were the options that we came up with, and we worked on them and overhashed them and had all kinds of input from all different aspects of the different options, and this is what we came down to as a committee. We
And
determined.
Champlain wasn't even considered.
Well, I-
Say we have to be considered, that's another option.
Well, but our starting point really is we have what we have, okay?
You're not answering the question. She asked you, is there some reason why Champlain isn't being considered? That's all she asked.
And I just tried to start answering that, I'm sorry.
She didn't.
Excuse me?
She didn't do any answering. She started to answer, but she's not answered her question.
At the
What we were
time.
presented was the current facilities that we have, to come up with a 5-year plan for what we're working with right now, which was Ross's Point, the high school, middle school, and Moore's. That's what we were asked to do.
Champlain is closed.
That's what we were asked to
Why
do.
still, we're still getting registration now?
Yeah, well, that's funny.
That's what I said.
Well, that's funny.
It's a new
When I
building all
registered
over.
my daughter for kindergarten this year, that's the first place I went, was Champlain Elementary. So if it wasn't up to code, they should
Can't
have
answer,
been
all I
there.
can answer is what
Kindergarten
I was asked to look
registration.
at, period. You know, you want to get in my face?
The option.
I just have one thing to say. I've heard several times that these buildings are in dire need of repair. My question is how did they get there? Simple enough.
That's a good question, George, and I've been wondering the same thing.
My roof leaks, I fix it. And my home, what happened here?
Good question.
I'm sorry, could you repeat?
I have
the
heard
question?
several times that these buildings, Moore's and Ross's Point, are in dire need of repairs. How did they get there?
They got old.
They got old. My house is 150 years old, I think that.
We don't have a mandate every time.
I'm not talking about a Band-Aid
No, I'm talking about.
or a Band-Aid. I mean,
What happens?
I take a look at my house and say, hey, I gotta put siding on it this year because I want a little energy savings. So I put insulation and siding on it. And my assessment goes up, so I pay more in school tax. But I'm saying is, those buildings, there's no need for those buildings to be in the conditions they are in if you do your maintenance. You
Well, another
can't
problem
maintenance
we got here,
every
too.
year and have it work.
Moore's joined Champlain Central in 1972, and then since 72, I believe, they spent almost $20 million in that building. How come it's in such bad shape?
Well, can I just say that
Yeah.
I don't think Moore's is in really bad shape.
Well, they're just telling us, you just said it's bad
No,
shape.
There's work that's
We
needed.
put $20 million there ever since the merger in 72.
Excuse me. There has been some work done, but
You're
there's
telling
more
me it
work-
must be.
There's more work needed, and I wanted to say that something might shed some light on this situation. I mentioned earlier that a lot of schools were constructed in the 50s and 60s to meet the baby boom population. Prior to that, there was a lot of schools constructed in the 30s. And prior to that, if you go back in history, the late 1800s and early 1900s. So each of those, about 30-year time periods, there were schools constructed. In the 1990s, through the current time, it's been another major period of construction for schools. And one of the reasons has been this. It's almost kind of a triple whammy. Building systems last about 25 to 30 years. So if you go back to the 50s and 60s, you come up to the 90s and now this start of the century. It's about a 30-year period, even a little more. Combine that, so a lot of the work that's been done over the last 10 years and is currently being done to fix and replace major systems in 50s buildings. The buildings that were done in the 30s, and you have a couple of them, the original Moore's building and the Rouse's Point building, are now two 30-year periods away, and the systems that might have been replaced in them in the 50s are now required to be replaced again. Couple that with increased state mandates in education, and updated code requirements, some that I mentioned earlier, requiring additional air and what have you. Roofs that essentially need to be replaced about every 15 years. And it's a constant, ongoing process. Capital construction needs to occur on an ongoing basis. You can do as much as you can do through maintenance, but at some point, systems wear out and they have to be replaced. So maintenance no longer does it. It keeps them up, but once they're at the end of their life, they have to be replaced. One of the things that you might consider going forward, longer term, is once you accomplish or decide, the board decides to do a capital project and get the buildings in shape, then take a look at perhaps establishing some type of, not maintenance, but really capital improvement set aside, so that each year you set aside a little bit. Now, that means your taxes are going to go up a little bit.
Not necessarily.
You're right, okay, but it means that then the next time you have a capital project, you have money that you saved ahead of time. Some districts do that, some don't. You also have a very large aid percentage. We have a couple other clients. Salmon River, I'll use that as an example. They get 95% aid. They do a capital project about once every 5 years. Okay? And in doing so, you're able to eliminate the real big projects. But there's other districts that, really need to kind of catch up and do a large project, and then they can do a little bit at a time to keep it up. So maybe that should be a goal as well, looking at long term, how do you stay on top of facilities? It is something though that does have to be on top.
Is there ever any reserve set up on it in the schools, stuff like that? I know in Everett, we used to set up a reserve, when you do a truck that lasts 10 years, we used to set reserves so that money was there when they needed it and everything.
There's that way, and then there's that. So there's those two ways to do it, or a combination of those two. That's a policy decision.
You can't compare Salmon River and Northeastern because Salmon River is federally funded because of the Indian children.
No, their building aid is 95%, just like yours is 95%.
And they also have federal.
But they get additional aid for Native Americans, that's true. But building aid is the same.
You can't compare it to.
I didn't mean to, I'm just using that as an example of where they do projects about every 5 and 6 years. And it's just that kind of cycle.
I just want to clarify.
Another option.
You guys want to react? We don't have a problem. Would you like us to look at that option?
We invite people to come down and ask questions, but then formally adjourn. Thank you very much for coming, and we'll be back on the 16th. And again, please take time to sign up.